Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Supply Chain. So, let's start with a question. AI is increasingly important in our changing supply chain landscape. But according to a recent survey, what percentage of respondents have yet to integrate AI into their supply chains? What do you think? Well, let me know your guesses over on social and keep listening because all will be revealed at the end of the show. Today, I'm excited to welcome another fascinating professional to our Woman in Supply Chain series. She's passionate about building resilient teams, championing women in supply chain and technology, and helping organizations turn complexity into clarity. But who is she? Well, it's Angela Woody. Angela is a seasoned IT professional with over 2 decades of experience driving enterprise-wide transformation at the intersection of operations, technology, and strategy across CPG, healthcare, and wholesale distribution industries. Today, Angela and I will be talking all about that career journey, learning to let go of inherited beliefs, connecting the dots between people, process, and platform, and the guiding principles that have shaped her life and success. But of course, we could not do this show without our sponsor. So the Women in Supply Chain Forum was created to foster real connections, bringing men and women together to network, learn, and build lasting bonds beyond traditional conferences. It's about strengthening pipelines, creating a community of advocates, mentors, and trusted peers. Similarly, the Woman in Supply Chain Award was born from a need to recognize female leaders navigating challenges and driving change. Find out more about the Woman in Supply Chain Forum and the awards over at sdcexec.com. So, welcome to the show, Angela.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy to have you here. Now, you are someone that has built a career around major digital and operational transformation, and that is so important right now. We're all
Exactly.
talking about it, right? But you're also
Yes.
passionate about empowering women, supporting the community, and I can't wait to know those different sides of you today. So, you have an IT degree and drove straight into a job at Kimberly-Clark, which is a
Mhm.
huge global business. So, how did that come about? And was that sort of a big corporate career? Was that always a plan for you?
Yeah. Well, first again, I just want to thank you for having me and thank you for blazing this trail of women in supply chain. Certainly enjoy your podcast. I'm very honored to be on this with you today. My entry into Kimberly-Clark was happenstance. Crazy story, but I attended the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, and every fall the university would host an internship fair. And in college, I happened to have a driver's license that allowed me to drive large shuttle vans, like the vans you see at the airports.
Okay.
And we're asking for volunteers to come and shuttle recruiters from an offsite parking lot to the conference center. So I volunteered. And as I was at the offsite parking lot, I had a recruiter from Kimberly-Clark that came into my shuttle. And it was a bit of a drive from the parking lot back to the conference center. So we started, sparking up a conversation. And he was asking me about my IT degree, asking me about some professors he had when he attended college, and just had a really nice conversation as we were going back to the conference center. So I finished my shift in commuting people back and forth from the offsite, changed into my power suit, grabbed my resumes, and started walking around the internship fair and dropped off my resume at the Kimberly-Clark booth. He immediately scheduled an interview for this internship with
Wow.
me. And I got the internship, only to find out later on I didn't technically check all the boxes of the criteria that they were looking for in recruiting interns. So, kind of my first experience right away is learning that somebody took a chance on me, because of a conversation or because of a situation. But I was placed into the IT supply chain team at, a huge company at Kimberly-Clark. And we had responsibility truly for all of the tactical planning systems at Kimberly-Clark. And as an intern, the exposure that I got within a global manufacturing company was amazing. And you know what? We had an amazing team that I had worked on. And after the internship had ended, they immediately offered me a full-time position at Kimberly-Clark to come back
Wow.
after I had graduated college. So all of this was happenstance. This was nothing that I never thought I would work, at a company like Kimberly
Hmm.
Clark, certainly. But the intern opportunity gave you a different look at what is out there in the industry. And I'm just, very thankful that I had to, the license to shuttle people back and forth
That
from the
is
parking lot to the conference center.
Yeah, that is such a great story. And I want to appreciate and acknowledge you for sharing that story because not only is it about happenstance,
Yep.
but also it's a little bit of luck, right? Because you ended up having the
Yes.
license that was needed for that particular position. But also you took the bull by the horns and you dove into something like the shuttle where you were putting yourself forward. And then even after you did a shift of that, got changed and made sure that
Yes.
you made your way through all
Yeah.
of those booths to make sure that you were noticed even further. And
Exactly.
that is you taking initiative. And I think that's really important, right? Because I think a lot of times when we're looking for an internship or we're thinking about our next position, we're not taking as much initiative as we really
Right.
should be.
Right.
And that is what helps with luck and happenstance.
Yes. Exactly.
Mhm.
100% agree with that.
I love that. So you stayed at Kimberly-Clark for over 13 years. And
Yeah.
so you must have seen and done a lot. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what you learned, how your career progressed, and maybe some of
Yeah.
your biggest achievements during that time?
Sure. You know, Again, working for a global manufacturing company, you just had a wealth of opportunities and different experiences that I had at my career there. I started again back on that IT supply chain team. So working from the ground up, I was the on-call support person. So nights and weekends, you had an
Wow.
extra phone or a pager that you would take with you. Now I'm showing my
Wait,
age with
wait, wait.
pagers, but
Wait, wait,
yep,
wait. You had a pager?
I had a pager. Yep, that you
You
had to
don't
take.
look old enough to have had a pager. Okay, let's just
Yep,
go there.
had to take it with me for that weekend or the week shift that you were assigned to. And if it went off, you were waking up in the middle of the night, figuring out what had happened. And honestly, looking back, that is my foundation of learning. That's how I started learning. When you're in a firefight mode, when something is down in the middle of the night, you're forced to start to learn. But my career progressed beyond that. So, working for the company, there was an opportunity to work on a first of a kind project within IT to accommodate a mandate that Walmart had actually back in 2005. They had a mandate for their top suppliers to put RFID tags on their product. And throughout that project, I had the opportunity to be innovative. We are experimental. It was really a career changing opportunity for me. And because I was really young in my career, I never had the opportunity to play around with different technologies yet. And really looking back, that's probably the experience I'm most proud of. We were one of the first tags that was read by Walmart back in the day. As a result of that experience, I authored an RFID business patent.
Wow.
And it was just an amazing experience. I mean, I was working with the top 100 suppliers that were distributing to Walmart. And, throughout that experience, I was working with some of our competitors, but we were all collaborating together to determine how we can get this RFID data that Walmart is reading to send back to us for analytics to understand how the supply chain worked. And so, again, part of that team, we were authoring new EDI standards to send the RFID data back and forth through ADI 856s and things like that.
That's cool. I
Um,
call that cooperation.
yes, yeah. And I was in Bentonville before Bentonville was Bentonville. I mean, it was
Wow.
very different than what it is now. But that was just an absolutely wonderful experience. But the RFID path back in 2005 lost some steam. I mean, the tags were pretty expensive for us to be trying to apply to, a box of Kleenex. So I had then the opportunity to transition into my first business transformation IT project.
Cool.
So we were getting our systems migrated from the mainframe onto SAP ERP.
Hmm.
And, looking back as well, I mean, just all these multiple opportunities that provided to me, certainly within a global manufacturing company, is something I'm just so very thankful for, because that ERP project really set the tone for the rest of my career
Hmm.
and my career path. And it has really been focused on that intersection of technology and business thus far.
That is so interesting, and all really because somebody took a chance on you too,
Yes,
right? Which
yes,
is
yes.
which is amazing. So it was a combination of a few things because, I don't know about you, but I always get that question. What does it need? What do I need to do? What do I need to upskill? What does that look like?
Yep.
What are people looking for? What are companies looking for?
Right.
And I think it's really a combination of putting yourself out there, taking initiative, a little bit of luck. But I
Mm-hmm.
also think LinkedIn can be a really big component of that as well, because you need the virtual networking and the
Correct.
online networking, but then you also need the in-person conferences if you can,
Yep.
local events for sure, and some of those internship fairs and things like that to make sure that you're seen and heard and you can see what is out there. And so I think
Correct.
all
Yeah.
of that is accumulation of what is actually possible and what you've just talked to us about.
Yeah, exactly. There are opportunities out there, for others to get exposure to different companies and different technologies and different industries. It's just the first step is always the hardest, right?
Mhm.
That's always the hardest step to take.
Yeah. Well, and then you decided to make a change. Now, I think you've said that growing up, your father worked for the same company until he retired. And so you thought maybe you had to do the same. And I think a lot of Gen X, maybe millennials, inherited that belief from boomer parents. I think that's changing now, though. So why
Yes.
did you shake off that mindset and decide to take a risk to embrace the journey?
I mean, I'm sure your parents had a similar experience, right? I mean, probably working for the similar company for most of their career.
Well, mine are a
They,
little bit different because they actually worked at a few different companies and then they decided to start their own company. So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I mean, I was at that company for 20 years, so I kind of
right.
inherited that mindset.
Right. Well, I mean, maybe because they had pensions, it was a little bit easier for them to stay. But I grew up in a very small town, and there were not a lot of opportunities, to move from company to company in this small
Right.
town. And, so growing up, what did I see? What was in front of me? What did I hear? It was, my father would talk about the company that he worked for, and that was his dedication. My relatives were the same, friends' parents were the same, and you just didn't hear of people moving from company to company when I was growing up. That's what I thought I had to do, right? I thought I was going to get in with a company and I was going to work for that company for my entire career. But within Kimberly-Clark, I was helping implement a warehouse management system within their healthcare division. And Kimberly-Clark decided to spin off that division into its own company. And because IT was a shared service, I wasn't moved over to the spinoff company. I made the decision to apply for a position at that healthcare company. And the only reason I made that decision to apply was because my husband's company had also been spun off from Kimberly-Clark a few years earlier, and I saw the success that he had now working for a smaller company. And just thought I would take a chance to see what it would do for me, and just it was a different experience because you're working for $1 billion company without an IT department.
Hmm.
And so that was an experience that, again, looking back, I'm just very thankful of having, of, trying to run a business and building something from scratch. We were certainly a startup IT department,
Hmm.
and got to experience with different models of how the organization was going to be formed. And looking back again, I'm very happy that I made that decision, to move and to see what the healthcare industry was versus working for a CPG industry. But I just
Absolutely.
couldn't say no to that opportunity.
Well, and you took the risk, right? You went against
Yes.
everything that you believed, but also saw your
Yes.
husband do it prior to that as well, right? So you
Yes.
did have a little bit of a roadmap of what it could be, but it could have been very different from you for you as
Yes.
well. So there was that risk factor and you were able to take that leap. Now, I think from there you made a couple of different stops and then you landed
Mhm.
at HD Supply. What is it
Mhm.
that you love about supply chain?
Well, let's just first say supply chain is not a flashy job like I'm going to say marketing or sales. Your hair is in a ponytail most of the time when you're walking into a facility. You don't wear a lot of makeup, especially when I was in the healthcare industry. It was the clean room that you had to walk in, so there
Oh,
was
and
no
even
makeup allowed.
perfume.
Yeah,
Perfume, right?
perfume we could not.
Oh.
No jewelry in manufacturing, right? Because something might it's a safety hazard. And I wore a lot of steel-toed boots, right?
Mhm.
And so as I was going through this experience, supply chain was dirty, and for some reason that sparked my interest, right? I was like, man, we are the last supply chain is really the last one that's going to touch the product that is being delivered to the customer. That's our responsibility. And I just fell in love with that aspect of it. And I've been implementing, state of the art warehouse management systems for the last 15 years. The best part of my job is I get to go walk out on the floor and talk to those individuals that are performing that function. These individuals are passionate about what they do, and they are very passionate about how they do their job, and really that tribal knowledge that a lot of those employees have, is just something that some of these companies, some of them started working for the companies, that I've walked into, but they have taught me a lot. They've taught me a lot about picking, about packing, warehouse management, freight management, transportation management, planning. They taught it all to me, and I don't think I would have learned as much about supply chain if I'd be working in another industry.
Helps you with a continual feedback loop. I would assume
That's
that
right.
being in IT and looking at some of the new options and opportunities that are on the market and things like that, it's essential for you to be able to have those conversations, have access to those
That's
conversations,
right.
and continue that feedback loop to make sure that you're doing the right thing, not only for the organization and for your team, but for the teams within that organization too. And for those
Yeah.
people, right? Because it's people that run
Yes.
supply chains, right? We
Yes.
need to take care of them.
Yes. I mean, now supply chain is a little bit becoming a little bit more flashy, right?
That's true.
With just the emergence of technology, it's at the forefront of supply chain now, which is really fun and exciting, especially when you're looking at robotics and automation
Mhm.
and just speed of business. Now the opportunities certainly are endless. So, what are you like? What was your love? Like, how did you just sink into supply chain?
Well, I'll say it's kind of in my blood because we've been talking about supply chain at the dinner table since I was like 9 years old.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of what I always thought I was going to do, even when I didn't really know that much about it. Because remember, I
Yep.
started in logistics too, right? So the
Yes.
broader supply chain has actually only been in my purview for, I don't know, the last 10, 12 years or so. And
Mm-hmm.
talking about it and learning about the different and realizing like sourcing, procurement, all of those things
Yes.
about supply chain. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just feel like it was naturally in my blood and it just sort of, got me. Like it gets
Mm-hmm.
everybody.
Yes.
But you talked
Yes.
about like some of the opportunities within technology and warehousing and all that kind of stuff. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now?
I would say first 2020 was a blessing in disguise for supply chain.
Oh, okay.
In my opinion, it brought some immediate visibility into how fragile our global
Mhm.
supply chain, really is.
Yeah.
So much so that supply chain finally became a topic in the boardroom. Prior to that, there was so much pressure in supply chain to cut costs out of the business, pinch pennies. You were begging for capital dollars to make investments within, the supply chain. And I would say, through 2020 and after, it changed the game, I think, on how we look at the impact of supply chain. There is still, I see some hesitation within, capital investments and IT investments in supply chain, in general. But IT runs your business,
Hmm.
right? Can you take an order? Can you manufacture a product? Can you pick, pack, ship, bill your customer without an IT network or without an ERP system or automation?
Right.
But yet, these capital dollars are not, moving in the direction of IT still. I mean, a lot of companies are still only allocating 2 to 3% of their total yearly funding to IT. And, yes, we are still a cost center, and some of us are certainly moving to a profit center. But too often you're reading the morning headlines of companies that their system was down or they couldn't handle the volume. And, I think if you look under the covers a little bit, it's because some of these investments or these upgrades or keeping software up to date were placed on the back burner
Hmm.
because some of that funding was not available to them or wasn't allocated, to
Right.
them. And
Yeah.
so I still see that as a challenge, but then you've got companies that truly are making that investment in IT and making that investment in upgrades, and they're the ones that are winning. They're the
Hmm.
ones that have that customer facing aspect of it where customers are excited and happy to be, working with those types of companies.
Hmm.
And so I still see that as a challenge, within IT is, when we need to keep something up to date, a lot of times that funding goes to some of your flashier areas of the business,
Hmm.
and still not in IT. And so I'm hoping, I think, with everything the last couple of years, starts to shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've just talked about some of the challenges, some of the opportunities. You've talked about how you get to talk to the people on the floor, how important that feedback loop is. I mean, with you being in technology, how do you see technology and people in the future, right? How do we work
Yeah,
together? How do we bring them together? I mean, change management is a big topic right now.
it is. And change management takes focus, time, resources, and truly empathy. I think change management is one of the most under leveraged capabilities utilized within these larger business and IT transformations. And I've seen many IT transformations fail because of a lack of investment in change management, or as you're within the phases of projects, the scope creep happens in the beginning of that the phases, right?
Right.
The initial phases. And what has to get cut? Change management and training, right? You're stealing the dollars out of that phase of the project to ensure that you meet, some of this additional scope, that was added as you start up the project. And then unfortunately, when you've implemented without change management, you start to struggle to recover. You're not hitting the numbers maybe that you had prior to that transformation. But again, empathy is having the ability to walk in the shoes of those associates. You're about to change their life. You're about to change the way that they work on a daily basis.
Mhm.
And so, the boots in the ground become really important to get out there,
Yeah.
understand, what they're doing, but also teach them how it's going to change and how it's going to better, this
Mhm.
process. I don't think any of us would just have given the keys to go drive our parents' car, and we
Right.
were getting driver's license. We took hands-on
I
classes.
wasn't even allowed to sit in that thing.
Yes, right. And so why do we expect our supply chain workers or, going through any sort of IT upgrade to just inherently know how to run a new system? So
Right.
I'm very passionate about change management. It is a key success factor in,
Mhm.
large business transformations.
Yeah, well, one of the analogies that I use a lot is digital transformation is only 20% technology and
Yeah.
80% people. And I
It is.
feel like I'm going to repeat myself forever on
Yep.
that
Yep.
until we all really get it right and take it seriously, right? Because
Thank you.
I think you're
Yes.
right. It's really important to the success of any digital transformation. You're bringing in technology, you need to make sure that you are taking care of the people part of it.
Yes. Yep.
So I was doing some research for the show, as I do, and I was looking at your LinkedIn, and I saw that you and your daughter did a bring your kid to work day, which I think is amazing.
Yes.
So what did your daughter think of supply chain? And then my follow-up question to that is, how do you think we engage the upcoming generations in the industry?
Hmm.
Because I think it's really important that we do it in conjunction, and I think a lot of people don't feel like we're doing it properly.
Hmm. If your company has a take your kid to work day, please do it. It was a wonderful experience. I will say that on our commute in Atlanta traffic, playing Frogger in the Atlanta traffic, my daughter got to experience a morning commute, which was awesome for her to see that. But as we were pulling into the parking garage, she said from the back seat, she said, "Mommy, why are we not going to the distribution center?" And I
Mm.
was like, oh, oh my gosh. I was like, I was shocked. And then at the next, response was, oh my gosh, am I going to be disappointing her? But
Right.
our dinner conversations, you talked about it earlier, right? Our dinner conversations are, mommy's working on this huge transformation, the largest distribution center that we have. There may have been occasions as we were driving to on our vacations to Florida that I might have driven us past the DC just to show them where I work. But she knew, she had this sense. She's like, this is not what I've seen before, right?
And she had the wording down. I mean, you're
Yes.
doing something right.
I think that she wanted to go and play with all the new RF devices that we were implementing and look at all the racking and things like that. But that was because of the dinner conversations. I mean, this
Yeah.
is my husband's in supply chain, I'm in supply chain. And so, she starts to hear that. And our children are sponges.
Hmm.
They listen to what you say, whether you think they're listening to you or not, but they truly
Absolutely.
are. And so, everything that I do are for my girls. I've got two girls, and, I want to be a role model for them and their friends, right? Just, show them that you can do anything that you set your mind to,
Hmm.
as long as you are working hard. And that really is the motto of our house is that, you can do anything if you put the time and work behind it.
And
And,
patience. Can I add
yes,
patience in there? Because I think that
yes,
that is a lost art these days, but there
yes,
is a lot of patience that comes with hard work,
yes.
right?
But if
And
you were at the
perseverance.
yeah,
Sorry, I'm going through all the
yes,
words. I'm thinking
keep
like
going. Yes,
patience, perseverance. Like, let's
right.
add some P words in there.
But, we are influencing this younger generation.
Mhm.
And, if I'm sitting at the dinner table saying, oh, math was the worst subject ever, guess what she's going to start to say? She's going to
Right.
say the same thing. So, as I said, they're sponges. They're very much influenced, based on what they see and what they hear and what we do. And so they know if they ever come to me and say, this is really hard, my response is going to be, and I'm taking a quote from my favorite Peloton instructor, but I'm going to say, you can do hard things. You can just keep your mind in it and just think positively, and you can do it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You can do hard things. I think that needs to
mhm.
be our mantra for everything. I mean, I could use
Yes,
that for today and this week and
yes,
be like, you can do hard things. So,
yes.
as a woman in supply chain and technology, what has that experience been like for you? Do you have any advice for anyone following in your footsteps besides bring your kid to work day?
Well, I've been in this industry for a couple decades, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's been challenging. The road has been challenging. I feel a little bit as if I have a double whammy of being a female in IT and then
Mhm.
also being a female in supply chain, because women still are vastly underrepresented in IT, certainly. And I've got a story. This was a couple of years ago. I was attending a supply chain conference, and we were on the floor of the conference, and I was walking with three of my male coworkers. we had a meeting set up with a potential vendor to look at some new technology in IT and supply chain. And so we show up to the booth, and the sales rep that was meeting us there introduced him to the three male coworkers and did not introduce himself to me. And, he kind of turned to walk to lead us to where we were going to be sitting down. And I took it upon myself to introduce myself. And I did throw out my title. And I think once I did that, all of a sudden, he maybe understood that there's a group of four, as part of the conversation. But I think he didn't think I was one of the decision makers. And
Mm,
boy, was he wrong. We
yeah.
were about to go into an RFP. And, again, that experience unfortunately led us to not include them in the RFP because it was my decision as to what we were, which vendor we were going to go through. That's 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and that's where you would think some things have changed and maybe they haven't. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it's great. It's challenging, but I like challenges. I
Hmm.
really thrive, off the challenge. But I've also been lucky enough to have, male coworkers and managers, that have trusted me, that push me out of my comfort zone.
You froze for a second, so we're gonna have to redo that part.
Okay.
So if you can start back with that you have had some what you were saying prior to that. You said you have some male
I had some male managers. Well, I had some male managers that trusted me, saw what I could bring to the table and really pushed me out of my comfort zone. Again, that's where having this love of supply chain is because I've had those types of supporters within my network and within my community.
Mhm.
And frankly, when you have a seat at the table, everybody is in the room together and you're trying to achieve the same goal.
Yeah.
And, I have been the only female in some of those meetings, but I am there because I have this expertise that they may or may not have. And so, again, we are all shooting for the same goal. Just those types of challenges is again, why I love supply chain and being in
I
supply chain.
I appreciate you for sharing that story, but I'm going to put a PSA out there. If you are in sales, know who you're meeting with, please. Know the titles, know who the decision makers are, because we all know what assuming means and what it
Yep.
does. And I'm not going to shake that analogy out because
Yep.
we all know what that means.
Yep.
And don't let it happen to you because it could be a missed opportunity. And so that is
Yes.
my PSA on that because that should not be happening
Yeah.
anymore.
Yes.
Do you have any, other than you can do hard things, do you have any other guiding principles that have contributed to your success, do you think?
Well, yeah, doing hard things, certainly grit, and never compromise your integrity,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that is kind of the three things, certainly that I live and breathe every single day. And it just, as you're facing new challenges, you're facing new technologies, you're facing, whatever geopolitical things are happening in the world, nothing is impossible. And so again, in my house, those are the three morals that we live off of every single day,
Mhm.
and certainly have helped me thrive and throughout my career.
I love that. Do you have anything that you can share around how you, in particular, champion women in the industry? I know the Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, but how else do you champion women in the industry?
Yeah. When I first started, mentorship was not something that was
Mhm.
necessarily available or even discussed. And so throughout, my career, it's been, informal mentors that I've had. I don't think it's anything formal. And some of them I don't even think knew that I looked at to them as a mentor, right? And so as we've evolved, have seen the importance of having mentorship. I've taken male and females as mentees, and really again worked with them to have an opportunity for them to talk about things that maybe they're not comfortable talking to their direct manager about, right? And I wish I had that. I wish I had somebody that I could go to when I first started and saying, "Hey, I'm not really sure that this math is adding up. How would you approach this?" Or, I'm leading a brand new team. I'm a new team, leader. How do I do this? What,
Right.
are the important things to look at? And so, I want them to feel comfortable with me. And again, because integrity is really important to me, I want them to see that in me, that they can come and I'm going to give them honest opinions and help guide them throughout their career. And basically, there's not pressure to do it all, especially on the female side. We're managing a career, we're managing households, we're managing children, we're managing schedules, things like that. And I want them to know that they're not alone in that. Just because you see somebody with a leadership title,
Mhm.
don't think that they have all of it under control either. We're experiencing the same thing. But if we start talking about it more, I
Mhm.
think it becomes, more mainstream. But also, these females, I want them to understand that they can walk into any room,
Mhm.
even if they're the only female sitting at the room, and they can get the job done.
I love that. Now, last question. I hate to whiten this down because I think this has been such a great conversation. What does the future hold for you?
I'm excited to be joining a new industry very soon. Still working on the business transformation aspect. I will also be involved in a lot more community activities across Atlanta. That is really important to me to
Cool.
give back.
Mhm.
I've worked so hard to be where I am, but the feeling that you get when you spend time out in the community and truly give back in the community is very special to me. And so working with some nonprofits is something that my kids are now asking me about. See, they're hearing and they see what you do, and want to emulate kind of what you're doing. And so I'm really excited about that. And they will be keeping me very busy with their school activities and sports activities and things like that. So I'm excited. It's going to be a very busy end of 2025 for the Woody family. But again, I think just everything that's coming out now with AI for me is very exciting. And having experience working on some first of a kind technologies, I really see that as driving us forward in a lot of these business transformations as well.
I love that. And it's been so great to hear your story of thinking your career might look one way and then learning to adapt and actually be thankful for the twists and turns that it kind of brought
Yes.
you, right? It really goes to show what bravery and resilience and perseverance and patience, all those words that we use today, can
Yes.
achieve. And I think this conversation will inspire lots of future female supply chain leaders. Now, did you have a guess at today's big question? At the top of the show, I asked you, according to a recent survey, what percentage of respondents have yet to integrate AI into their supply chains? Well, it's a huge 77%. To be honest, that number kind of shocks me a little bit. It just goes to show that the industry overall still has a lot of work to do when it comes to digital transformation and technology. Now, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show and check out more content from the best and the brightest over at letstalksupplychain.com. We've got incredible guests, innovative strategies, and transformative solutions you can't afford to miss. Angela, thank you so much for coming on the show. And until next
Thank
time,
you.
I'm Sarah Barnes Humphrey. This is Let's Talk Supply Chain.